My name is John and I'm a privacy and data protection consultant here in London, and I'm very pleased to be taking part in this year's Cybersecurity in Digital Mental Health Conference. In the last few years, the demand for digital mental health has grown dramatically. The reasons are well discussed elsewhere, but perhaps mainly because the next generation of consumers have started to normalise the idea of seeking help for mental health issues, whereas previous generations found stigma attached to the whole issue. Grin and bear it, keep calm and carry on. That generation. And being the new generation, they're also happy to find those services digitally. So here we are, at the start of this revolution, but already beset by the daily doom-laden cyber bad news, data loss, compliance breaches, the walk of shame in the tech press. And given that our customers are potentially sharing highly sensitive personal information with us, we are right to be attuned to those risks. And so we arrive at today's conference, discussing how to improve our security posture. Maybe technologies, maybe tools or services, all good. But what if I told you there was something you could do right now that would dramatically alter your information security profile without a huge investment in technology or governance overhead? Even better, what if I said that it was basically free? Well, let me introduce you to the power of data minimization. It's an existing GDPR principle, number 3. It basically says, don't keep more than you need, just enough for as long as you need it, but not longer. And it's one of those principles that the folks in marketing tend to have an issue with. Data is value, right? Data is how we create value. And so the more data, the more value. Big data. So at a glance, it's a principle that has to be fought with, complied with. But in fact, it is the single best investment you can make to ensure that the privacy of your customers is protected, along with the reputation and future of your business. Let's use a metaphor to explore the idea. Imagine that I launch a new business where I store your house keys while you're on holiday, in case someone needs to get in, an emergency, a family member. It's safer and more reliable than a neighbour or under the mat. $5. And to make it even easier, why don't I store the key permanently for, say, just $10? Then you don't even have to remember to give it to me. It's a brilliant service, so I get lots of customers. Now, I need to remember whose key is whose. So I set up a little database, name, address, email, phone. Enough to do a little marketing with, billing, etc. Standard stuff. Now let's think about information risks. When we analyse information risks, we're looking at threat communities, how often they might attack, and how strong my controls are against the threat. In our case, we might consider professional burglars. How often might I get broken into? I live in a well-to-do area, and I do the analysis, and I come up with once a year. Once a year, someone will break into my house and find what? Well, all of the keys of my neighbourhood, and all of the addresses that go with those keys. It's a basic disaster, for which no amount of insurance will cope. And of course, my reputation would be in the toilet. So let's think about how to improve the security of my home to eliminate that risk. Cameras, guards, fences, locks, and so on. Fantastically expensive and undone by me lazily hiring a guard who also happens to be working for the thieves. Expensive and certainly not foolproof. Yes, I can put the keys in the safe, but once it is known what's in there, the thieves will find the resources to break in or even remove the safe. And yes, the laptop has a password, but again, when the value of the target rises, so do the capabilities of the threat communities that are interested. Remember, there might be an insider who's helping. Okay, so how does data minimization help with this? Remember, store less and for a shorter time. Well, let's say I don't keep your keys all the time, regardless of how that might seem like a very efficient option. Instead, I will just store your keys when you're away and dispose of them the minute you're back. So now remember when, I get broken into, there are only a few keys in the house, so the total impact is reduced. This is the equivalent in the digital world of having a working data retention policy that deletes data that you're not using. But we're still at risk because of the impact of the few keys we do hold. And when we do the analysis, we also realise that during the summer there will be a higher risk as many people will be going on holiday at the same time. So back to data minimization again. Question, why are we storing any personal data at all? We did that because it seems that that's what businesses do. They set up a sales record containing a fully identified customer. But why? What if we just handed out half of an old school cloakroom ticket and keep our half with the key? Maybe write a secret word on our half so that we can check who's asking for the key. To the customer, there's no difference. They're used to holding laundry tickets, so they're happy. And we have found a clear way of finding the key that they're looking for when they return. Even if someone else wants the ticket, they can quote the number and the secret word. So now what happens when we're broken into? The thief finds a bunch of keys with a cloakroom ticket attached. Even if they can work out what that signifies, there's no way for them to match keys to houses. They could go around every house in the area and try all of the keys in each door. But given that I will have now alerted the community, the risk to the burglar being observed is now very high. The risks have been utterly transformed, and we actually don't need the CCTV cameras, the locks or the guards. So by applying creative data minimisation, we delivered the exact same service to the end user, their happy customers, but with a fraction of the risks. Okay, that's a fairly simplistic metaphor. So how does that apply to the real digital world? Well, the exact same way. Creatively ask, how can I offer this service anonymously? We use quasi-anonymous services every day. Think of a service like Reddit. Sure, it's not a digital mental health offering, but thousands of people use it as a confidential advice forum every day for very personal issues with high levels of anonymity. You can be sure that Google and the rest are tracking your progress, but you can take steps to prevent that. And of course, use an anonymous email address when you've signed up. So why not apply this concept to your service? The question is this: do you truly need to identify the user as a real-life person known to others, such as the state or the health services? Well, sometimes you do, if you're going to perhaps get funds from the user's health insurance, or to check that they're eligible for the service because of their status, well, perhaps their own benefits or state pension. In most cases, we might find that it's not required, and all we want to be able to do is authenticate the user against the ID they have given, their anonymous email address, and then maybe ensure that we can take payments. Again, we can now do that anonymously using digital currencies such as Monero. Encourage your users to use a VPN service to mask their IP address, and do not put trackers on your own websites or services. And think very hard about what else you want to store about the person, as an identity can be reassembled with sufficient data. And for those services where you do want to identify a real-world person for eligibility, then think about designing the process where, after validation, only that status is stored, discarding the real-world data used to establish it. So, these are just a few ideas to trigger your imagination, reinventing your business from one where data is ever increasing to one where, deliberately and mindfully, data is fully minimised, and with it, risk. Many thanks for listening, and enjoy the rest of the conference.